This video is brought to you by MR Hi-Fi Reviews. We are driven to create high-quality, visually stimulating, and honest, informative reviews of personal audio, home audio, and technology, bringing you the latest and greatest news from the audio industry. Visit us at mrhifireviews.com.
We rise and then we fall. Can the tides calling through it all? Titans watching, waiting. Once rivals, now we sit patient at the end of the world. Where will we be? Immortality's calling. They'll speak our names forever. Gonna build an
Hey friends, my name is Marcello. Today I'm going to be giving you my impressions on the current flagship headphone amplifier from iFi Audio, the Pro iCAN, which was sent over for me to review by the kind team over at iFi Audio. Big thanks to them for allowing me to check out their flagship amp. No one has compensated me for this review, and all thoughts and impressions are my own. For this review, I will be listening to the iFi Pro iCAN paired with my own Topping D90 and Schiit Bifrost 2 digital analog converters, as well as A/B listening to the iFi Pro iCAN versus the Phonitor XE that I have on loan, versus a ZMF Pendant, versus my own Topping A90 and Schiit LYR 3. As with all my audio reviews, I will utilize my own headphones in my collection or any headphones that I have in for review to search for synergies with the iFi Pro iCAN. I will cover 5 main topics: build quality, specification, design, and quality of sound. Then I will give my overall conclusions and leave my affiliate links in the video description to the gear discussed. If you end up deciding you want to make a purchase, it greatly helps the channel if you use one of my links. So let's get right into it. iFi Audio is an award-winning audio tech company whose one goal is to improve the listener's music enjoyment. I was first introduced to iFi Audio early on in my Headphone journey when I purchased a small portable amp DAC called the iCAN, which I truly enjoyed with its smaller form factor, burr brown DAC chip, and quality of sound. Later I upgraded to its bigger brother, the Micro IDSD Black Label, which has significantly more power, 2 burr brown DAC chips, and a richer quality of sound in my opinion. This is when I really started to become a iFi Audio believer. I still have it to this day, and it's my go-to travel amp. Starting with build quality, specs, and design, the iFi Pro iCAN is visually beautiful with its silver metallic enclosure and matching selectors, toggle switches, and controls. Starting from the upper left corner of the face of the Pro iCAN, the LED iFi logo turns green when powering on to solid state mode and goes through about a 45-second warm-up sequence, then illuminates white when the amplifier is ready in solid state mode. When switching from solid state to one of the tube modes, the iFi logo flashes white for several seconds until it is ready, and then the logo becomes a solid light orange to let you know the tube mode is ready. Lastly, the iFi logo will illuminate red if it goes into protection mode. I really appreciate the visual system iFi has implemented using their logo. Well done, guys. Next, on the front of the amp, you have the input selector. Inputs 1 through 3 are RCA single-ended, and input 4 is balanced XLR. One of my favorite features of this amp and many iFi products is the implementation of their X-bass correction system. For most recordings, I really appreciate audibly enjoying the sub-bass and mid-bass, and with some headphones, actually feeling the air move and the drivers rumbling can really add to the listening experience. Unfortunately, at times, I've ran into some headphones or speakers that have other great properties to their sound signature, such as the mid-range or the treble, but they're missing the lower end sound presence, and I would like to hear that. This is when X-bass comes in. The Pro iCAN utilizes 3 options to tailor the sound signature, the first focusing on the bass region below 40 Hz, the second below 80 Hz, and lastly the third below 160 Hz. For those of you not into measurement terminology, the X-Bass feature is one of the biggest value propositions to this amp for me, as it truly works and sounds very good. Take a Hifiman Ananda, for instance. For some modern genres of music, I might not gravitate towards that headphone. However, with a Pro iCAN, having the ability to tailor the bass of the headphone while still keeping some of the other great qualities of the Ananda is a huge benefit to this amp. The X-Bass is not done by digital signal processing either, so the delivery of bass in my listening experience is better and of cleaner quality in my opinion than other methods I've personally heard. Directly underneath the X-Bass and on the front of the amp, the Pro iCAN has its 3 operation modes. First is the solid state mode, which is a pure solid state circuit using JFETs and is fully discrete Class A. The second mode is the tube mode, consisting of 2 NOS GE5670s with the JFET circuitry switched out for an all-valve Class A operation. Lastly, the third mode is the Tube Plus mode. This mode reduces negative feedback to a minimum, resulting in a greater amount of the tube's natural harmonics. I enjoyed listening in all 3 modes, each of which offered a warmer than what I consider to be neutral sound, which is a good thing to my ears. Each mode sounded fatigue-free and delivered music effortlessly and intimately with lots of dynamic punch. I will get into this a bit more in the quality of sound section of the review. The implementation of 3 different operating modes from one amp, in my opinion, is another awesome value proposition of the Pro iCAN, allowing one amp to sound differently by simply engaging a different mode. As far as headphone outputs on the front of the amp, the Pro iCAN offers an XLR 3-pin for balanced listening, a 6.3mm balanced single-ended output, a 6.3mm unbalanced headphone output, a 3.5mm single-ended output with IE match for use with more sensitive IEMs and headphones, and lastly a 3.5mm balanced TRRS standard with built-in IE match. The Pro iCAN provides a lot of versatility for the different types of headphone outputs most listeners may want or need. You're even capable of having 2 headphones plugged in and be driven simultaneously, which is pretty cool to quickly hear the differences between 2 headphones and their sound signatures. The next feature on the front of the amp is also a pretty great one in my opinion. The 3D holographic for headphones and loudspeaker system, which has 2 separate analog signal processing matrix circuits that switch automatically between headphone and/or loudspeaker. I think some audio purists will appreciate that this feature is implemented again without digital signal processing. The first click of the 3D system allows the headphone listener to simulate narrow speaker placement, such as 2 speakers on each side of a large computer monitor. When this feature is used with loudspeakers, it adds about 30 degrees in the apparent width of the soundstage. The second click matrix simulates a more traditional textbook speaker placement sound with a simulated equal distance triangle between speakers and the listener. When used with loudspeakers, the apparent width of the soundstage is increased by about 60 degrees. Lastly, the third 3D matrix simulates even wider speaker placement that can give a more spacious presentation from your headphones and loudspeakers. I found the 3D matrix to do a pretty good job with helping recordings that maybe needed a bit more space, as well as headphones with a smaller stage, such as the 6XX, to help correct some of their areas of opportunity they have with their stage. The 3D matrix isn't some gimmick, it actually does work. The more time I had with the amp, the more I was able to hear the subtle differences across several headphones and recordings. Amazing sounding headphones such as the Focal Clear or Utopia, the ZMF Aeolus or Sennheiser 650 can in my opinion benefit from the 3D matrix if a wider perceived soundstage is desired. The 3D holographic feature is another great value proposition of the iFi Pro iCAN in my opinion, allowing you to take and alter the stage to some degree of headphones or speakers that you may love but wish you had a bit more spacious sound from them. The iFi Pro iCAN is a powerhouse, delivering enough juice to drive nearly any headphone in existence today. The amp has 3 settings, 0 dB, 9 dB, and 18 dB, delivering greater than 10 volts in single-ended mode and over 20 volts in balanced mode. I never needed to use the third setting and mostly used the 0 dB or 9 dB setting for all my time with this amp. If you do have hard to drive headphones, however, this amp can likely drive them like a champion Formula 1 race car driver. Lastly, for the front of the unit, there's a heavy-duty, beautiful-looking and feeling volume control that is also controllable with a provided remote. This feature may be appreciated by listeners using the amp as a preamp for speakers. Let's briefly touch on the back of the amp so I can get into my overall sound impressions. On the back of the Pro iCAN, it has a balanced XLR input, 3 unbalanced RCA inputs, 1 balanced XLR output, 1 unbalanced RCA output, a DC loop out for use with the iFi electrostatic module, a connector for the iFi electrostatic add-on module, and the DC power supply unit. Believe it or not, there are more design features and tech specs I could go into, but for the sake of time, I will link to the amp in the video description below so you can deep dive even more if you want to. So let's get into the most important part. How does it sound? To my ears, the iFi Pro iCAN is a great sounding amp that provided me with hours and hours of fatigue-free listening with many different headphones and genres of music. I quickly took to the amp for its versatility and ability to take headphones that might need more bass or stage and bring them more in line with my personal listening preferences. Being able to do this by turning a physical control versus using a computer was more enjoyable to me and, in my opinion, provided a better listening experience. I found myself mostly listening to the Tube or 2 Plus mode depending on the headphone I was using. 2 Plus sounded great with dynamic headphones such as the ZMF Aeolus, ZMF Verité, and Sennheiser 6XX, where I found the Tube mode sounded great with the Hifiman Ananda, Aeon 2C, and the Rad-0 from Rosson Audio. I enjoyed listening to the Pro iCAN with both my topping D90 and the Schiit Bifrost 2. I felt the Bifrost 2 helped a bit with the overall stage presentation of the Pro iCAN, as the amp to my ears sounds a bit more romantic, dynamic, and intimate compared to some of the other amps I A/B compared it to. This was in no way a bad thing. In fact, I preferred it at times with brighter sounding headphones or recordings with beautiful intimate vocals. Pro Falcon said recently on the headphones.com forum, "What is a review without comparisons?" So let me give you a few quick comparisons. Compared to the Phonitor XE, the Pro iCAN sounds warmer, more dynamic, and romantic to my ears with smaller staging and slightly less detail. There is still plenty of detail, don't get me wrong, it has just the right amount, especially for longer listening sessions. I preferred the sound signature of the Pro iCAN with the DACs and headphones I had on hand over the Phonitor XE, which is the most neutral, clean amp I've ever heard so far. Compared to the LYR 3 from Schiit, I found again the Pro iCAN to be a bit warmer, punchier, and a touch more romantic sounding, with both amps sounding close as far as their staging. However, the 2 Plus mode is where the Pro iCAN, in my opinion, outshines the LYR 3, bringing more of that tube flavor and euphonic sound to my favorite recordings and dynamic headphones. Stay tuned for my upcoming review on the LYR 3, and don't forget to subscribe. Comparing the A90 with the Pro iCAN, I found the A90 to sound a bit more transparent and defined with a darker sounding background. However, the Pro iCAN, again in my opinion, wins out for overall music enjoyment with its more musical and dynamic sound. Lastly, I A/B compared the iFi Pro iCAN with the ZMF Pendant. I found the ZMF Pendant to have the wider, more euphonic sound, as well as being slightly more detailed and dry sounding with the stock JJ&OS tubes. The iFi Pro iCAN sounded warmer than the Pendant, with both amps sounding very dynamic and punchy. Darker sounding headphones generally paired better with a Pendant with the stock tubes, and brighter sounding headphones I found to be a bit more enjoyable with the iFi Pro iCAN, unless I rolled tubes with a Pendant. Don't forget to subscribe today, as I will have a full review on the ZMF Pendant from Amps and Sound on the channel very soon. Having had the great fortune and support of awesome companies and individuals sending me many different amps and headphones to review, the concept of synergy between the DAC, headphone, and amp becomes more and more apparent as I'm listening and comparing so much different audio gear. What makes the iFi Pro iCAN special, in my opinion, is it has the ability to help shape the headphone sound and alter the listening experience more than some other flagship amps with all of its different modes and features. There may be other solid-state amps that have slightly more detail that also cost more, or there may be other tube hybrid amps that sound a bit more euphonic that may also cost more, but those amps won't likely include all of the features the Pro iCAN has, such as X-Bass, 3D Matrix, the 3 operation modes, all while being slightly less expensive. This to me makes the Pro iCAN an extremely great value compared to many other amps, especially if you have multiple headphones and IEMs in your collection. To give an analogy, the iFi Pro iCAN is like the mixed martial arts fighter in the amp world, able to fight in multiple disciplines, whereas some other amps might be masters of just one. Pair it with a DAC you like, and you have a stack that takes up very little room on your desk or hi-fi cabinet. Want to change up the sound a little from your headphones or speakers? Turn on the X-Bass or 3D Matrix. Want a bit more euphonic presentation? Flip on one of the tube stages. The iFi Pro iCAN gives you the ability to take control of the music at the tip of your fingers. In conclusion, I think the iFi Pro iCAN is one of the most versatile flagship headphone amplifiers I've heard yet, and I definitely think it's worth giving a listen to if you're in the market for a headphone amplifier. At the end of the day, all my impressions are subjective, and the only way for you to find out if you truly like a headphone or an amplifier is to give it a listen. Thanks again to iFi Audio for allowing me to have an extended demo with the amazing Pro iCAN, and a big thank you to all of the supporters of the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't subscribed yet, show your support and subscribe today. And if you're interested in purchasing the amp, please use one of my affiliate links to help me to continue to bring you more content for the channel. Until next time, friends, much love.